Muchas gracias, Juan Manuel. We could almost do this in Spanish here. Unfortunately, we'll exclude a lot of you, but good evening, everyone. Pleasure to be here. It's really my privilege to be with all of you tonight. You know, I was telling Nadia earlier this evening that the United States of America is the second largest Spanish-speaking country in the world. Mexico is the largest with about 130 million people. And we here in America have 65 million Spanish-speaking people, close to 20% of the American population, and on its way to about 40% by the year 2050. So we have a lot of good company. Right, Pamela? Given the haze that exists in Manhattan, which is reminiscent of a Charles Dickens story, we are very grateful that so many of you ventured out to come to be here with us tonight. We sincerely hope that we can create a pleasant distraction for you this evening from all this smog that we see out there. I've been living in New York City for about 40 years. I think we have gone through a lot, from terrorist attacks to pandemics to snowstorms and hurricanes, Hurricane Sandy and others. But I have never lived through New York City in a place like this. A friend of mine told me, he said, this is interesting, right? For the last 2-3 years, we wear masks at home, and we took them out when we were out. Now we're doing the opposite. We put the mask out, and then we take them off when we come home. Anyhow, as the great-grandson of Madrileño, you know, a person from Madrid, who was an immigrant into these Americas, I have a very distinct honor to be standing here at the podium introducing our first medal winner, Nadia Calvino. She serves as the first deputy prime minister. She tells me it's the equivalent of vice president. I haven't double-checked that, but I believe you. And Minister of Economic Affairs and Digital Transformation for the Spanish national government. That's a major job. Imagine, you know, managing the economy and at the same time trying to transform it into a totally digital economy. That's a big challenge, but it's not a big challenge for a person like her with the energy, the brightness, and the enthusiasm that she takes in everything she does. She's been part of the Spanish government since 2018. Among other positions, she has served as second vice president, third vice president, Minister for Economy and Digitalization, and Minister for Economy and Business. So quite a lot of different jobs in the Spanish government administration. Prior to joining the Spanish government, she spent 4 years as Director General for Budget at the European Commission. So you can only imagine what it will probably be like trying to figure out how to balance a budget among all these European countries. If we think we have issues in America, imagine what it is to try to herd all those countries into one direction. But she's been able to achieve that. Before that, you know, she held a number of other positions at the Commission, in addition to obviously working at the Spanish Economic Ministry. A lot of her focus areas have included financial services, mergers, antitrust, foreign trade, macroeconomic analysis, you know, and forecasting. So we have somebody here that is very fitting to New York City in terms of financial services and mergers. Maybe not so much antitrust. We don't like that here in New York City. But for sure, macroeconomic analysis. In addition to being an economist, and I'm very proud to say I am too, but I don't practice that anymore. She also has a law degree from the National Distance Education University based in Madrid. She has received many prominent awards over time, including the Master of Digital Award from Digital Europe, the Fernandez La Torre, no relations, Journalism Prize, and the Public Sector Lawyer of the Year Award from Iberian Lawyer Magazine. In recent years, and this is one of my most favorite commentaries about her, in recent years she has earned a global reputation and a lot of praise for being a strong advocate of gender equity. In a speech in 2022, she said she will never again participate in a panel discussion in which she was the only woman. I don't know how much she's been able to live up to that, because sometimes it's hard. But I remember in one of my advisory groups in our company, we only had one woman, and one of the members said, I go on strike. I will never show up again if you only have one woman in this council, which is a good thing to do. She later then told the New York Times, and quote, we cannot make 50% of our population and our talent invisible. When it comes to public discussions, excluding a representative number of women limits the approaches to issues. And it is also very important for our girls, our young women, to see role models. If my daughter, who is a freshman in college right now, were here today, I would have made it mandatory for her to come with me tonight. The FBA is enormously proud to have you here with us, and we look forward to a lot of your remarks and your insights into what's happening not only in Spain, but in the European Union and around the world. Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Buenas noches. Good evening. Dear Mr. President, dear friends, queridos amigos, queridas amigas, tengo que hacer un saludo a los hermanos hispanohablantes que están tan bien representados aquí esta noche. First and foremost, thank you very much. Thank you very much. It is a great honor to receive this medal, to receive this award. And I am really, really glad that despite the haze, as you were saying, and despite the smog, however we want to call it, we were able to take off and land in New York today and to be with you this evening. And to receive a medal from such a distinguished association with a long-standing commitment to fostering dialogue, understanding, and cooperation on a global scale for a more interconnected and peaceful world. And I have had the chance to exchange views with some of you, and we just saw a video. It's really inspiring. It's really impressive to see how important it is, the work that you're doing. I think your work is actually more important than ever, given today's challenging circumstances around the world. Because our world is going through massive changes that are having a profound impact on the international world order. Russia's invasion of Ukraine is obviously the key source of global uncertainty right now, but not the only one. We have had a chance to discuss some of those elements also before we started having dinner. The emergence and competition between world superpowers opportunities and challenges derived from the twin digital and green transitions, risks of economic fragmentation and changes in global value chains that we thought were there to stay forever. I usually use the idea that the tectonic plates on which the international order was based since the end of World War II are shifting. And this is a massive change that has far-reaching implications in many areas, from security, economic and financial stability, political alliances, to energy markets, disruptive technologies, and well-functioning democracies. I think it's very important to bear this in mind also. And I've seen all these issues influence international meetings. When I attend G20 meetings, World Bank, International Monetary Fund, also in my role as chair of the International Monetary and Financial Committee, which I started last year, and we will have the final meeting under my chairmanship in the autumn in Marrakesh. And this provides me with really an extraordinary opportunity to see how all of these frictions, all of these shifts are actually influencing the way we interact in international fora. And that's why I was saying, against this backdrop, that it is more important than ever that we strive to find common ground and that we convey strong messages of cooperation and confidence. And I am a firm believer that concrete actions, leadership, and vision do matter when we are shaping the world of today and, more importantly, the world of tomorrow. We should also, in these debates, overcome false trade-offs. For example, some may be tempted, and we were discussing just a moment ago, some may be tempted to say we have to delay the climate transition because, you know, the war in Ukraine, and particularly in the case of Europe, which is most directly impacted, we should slow down this process. But I think, on the contrary, that this shock is showing that the green transition is more urgent than ever. It is a global challenge, so it requires a global response, and we need to drive a fair process for emerging economies that have a strong voice and expect the system to support them in managing this transition to the benefit of their economies and their citizens. And the same goes for new industrial policies, leading to calls for protectionism and strong opposition to open economies and international cooperation, international trade in some countries. And we know from history that this approach has led to lower growth, less prosperity, less cooperation, and more conflict throughout the world. So at the end of the day, let's be honest, we need to find workable ways to achieve green, sustainable growth, efficient and fair markets. I am actually a firm believer in competition, including antitrust as a tool to ensure that markets work for the benefit of citizens, and well-functioning, rules-based international trade, which brings benefit to all. And there is only one way yet to address these global challenges, and that is the multilateral framework and its institutions, to which we must really pay tribute here, and that we must support and strengthen so that they can continue to be fit for purpose in this new environment and respond to current needs. Many times I think when I'm in Washington that if the Bretton Woods institutions had not been created, we would need to set them up right now, because they continue to be the core of the global safety net, which ensures financial stability and fosters a cooperative approach to tackle common challenges. And since we took office in the Spanish government 5 years ago, this has been the approach of the Spanish government. By the way, in Spain, we have a king, which has also received the medal, and then we have a president of the government. So indeed, I am the first vice president. I was minister, then third vice president, second vice president, and now first vice president of the Spanish government. And our approach, since we took office in 2018, has been very much aligned to your values, very much aligned to the idea of multilateralism, as a key feature and a strong basis for this new world order that is bringing peace and prosperity, I hope, in the coming years. And so I take this recognition and this medal to be, from such a relevant and influential association as yours, to be an acknowledgement also of the growing leadership of Spain in the global arena. And Spain's leadership in the international arena will be more prominent as of July the 1st. We were just saying when we'll take over the rotating presidency of the Council of the European Union. And one of our top priorities will indeed be to strengthen the multilateral framework to the benefit of the world economy and with a very special attention to the needs of most vulnerable countries and emerging economies, sometimes put under the common umbrella in these last years of the Global South. And another top priority for us when we chair the Council of the European Union will be to reinforce the role of the European Union as a global actor, taking advantage of Spain's position as a gateway between Europe and Latin America, as well as Africa. So we need to deepen our economic and political alliances and our transatlantic link, including the invisible bridge that is Spanish. The common language we have is more important than ever also, if we want to contribute to peace going forward. Let me conclude on this idea, and it is that whereas in the last years we've been confronted with many unexpected events, let's call them this way. There's always challenges in our lives, but I would say that the concentration we've had in the last 5 years since I was in the Spanish, I went back to Spain to be a member of the government, the concentration has been quite intense, let's put it that way. But many of the circumstances we are living are not unprecedented, actually. Crises are an integral part of economic history, and we have always also seen wars, pandemics, and inflationary pressures in the past. So this is not unprecedented, so we should really look back and try to take and learn the lessons that history teaches us, and not forget that peace and multilateralism, as opposed to conflict and fragmentation, has brought prosperity for millions of people all over the world. And this should be the compass guiding our actions today and in the years to come. Your medal today is a source of inspiration and motivation to continue to contribute to the best of my ability to build a better world for today and tomorrow. And I'd like to also take this occasion to publicly thank my family here with me today for their patience and unwavering support, so precious to me. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much.
Can the family please stand up? Yeah, it is such a privilege to have 3 out of the 4 children in the family with you today. And on behalf of the FPA, congratulations on this great honor, and keep up the great work that you're doing.
Thank you.
So it gives me great pleasure to present Vice Chair Shana Sabah to the podium. She's going to be introducing Dr. Sean Decatur.
Thank you. Good evening. Dr. Decatur started his career at Mount Holyoke College, where he taught from 1995 to 2008. He was professor of chemistry and department chair, as well as associate dean of the science faculty. In 2004 and 2005, he was a visiting scientist at MIT. Upon departing Mount Holyoke, Dr. Decatur held the position of Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences at Oberlin College from 2008 to 2013. Most recently, Dr. Decatur served as president of Kenyon College, where he spent his tenure making Kenyon a more diverse and inclusive institution. Dr. Decatur has received a number of national awards. He was named a Fellow of the American Association of Advancement of Science in 2017 and was elected to the American Academy of Arts and Sciences in 2019. This past December, New York was very lucky to have him move to New York, where he was appointed president of the American Museum of Natural History. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Dr. Decatur to receive the FBA medal.
Thank you, Sana, for that kind introduction. And thank you to the Foreign Policy Association for this wonderful honor. And congratulations to my fellow honorees, Nadia Calvino and Felix Matos Rodriguez. I'm really privileged to be in your distinguished company, and I'm greatly honored by the opportunity to speak to all of you tonight. As Sana mentioned, I've been at the American Museum of Natural History only a few months, and some of you may be wondering, what's the relevance to the work that I do to the work of the Foreign Policy Association? The Natural History Museum is a New York icon, certainly a place where many people bring their children and grandchildren. Many people come through on school field trips. Over 300,000 New York City school children a year come through the museum on field trips. But you may be wondering, what's the role of the museum in a global context, and especially in a global policy context? And I'd like to begin by actually saying, one way to think about this, really quite sadly, is to look out of the window and to see a real vivid example of how interconnected the natural world and human society are. And of course, I mean the smoke from the wildfires and the eerie orange haze that settled on New York over the course of the past few days. The fires are burning several hundred miles away, yet causing real health hazards and well-being consequences for individuals here and across the eastern seaboard. The city's air quality on Wednesday was the worst ever recorded. Field trips and outdoor events have been canceled. People are putting their masks back on simply to venture outside, and individuals with respiratory and heart issues are suffering. The air quality this week and its causes, a large number of wildfires due to warming temperatures and droughts relating to climate change, are manifestations of a planet in crisis with very real implications for communities and people's lives. So are accelerating species extinction, the loss and collapse of habitats, and emerging infectious disease, which of course leads me to COVID-19. While epidemiologists have been warning for decades that a devastating pandemic flu was inevitable, even imminent, we were still, as a global society, largely unprepared, and many millions died that might have otherwise been saved. So many people don't know that the American Museum of Natural History has a staff of scientists working across the range of biological sciences, physical sciences, and anthropology, tackling some of the big questions and big problems of our time, including these issues. They work with our collections at more than 32 million specimens and artifacts. It's an irreplaceable scientific resource and a record of life on the planet. They work in labs at the museum and in the field. We are entering what's traditionally field season in the summer, when our scientists travel to locations around the world to conduct research. And this summer, field season is back in full swing following several years of pandemic disruptions. Over the course of the next few weeks, we'll have scientists traveling to Panama, Brazil, Madagascar, many places with complex ecosystems of significant or unique biodiversity where species and habitats are threatened. Our scientists will often work in teams with international colleagues, sometimes for years at a time. These colleagues hail from the areas where the research is taking place and from universities and science institutions around the world. Perhaps more than any other time in history, science today is a global endeavor, aided by technology, of course, with an increasing focus on cross-disciplinary exchange, and spurred by the crises we face, which demand global perspectives, interdisciplinary approaches, and cooperation across borders and sectors. Our museum is contributing to COVID research and preparing for the next infectious disease threat. Curator Nancy Simmons, who studies bat biology, ecology, evolution, and conservation, is part of a group modeling methods to predict wildlife host species for viruses related to SARS-CoV-2 that will help predict and track emerging viruses. She's a member of the Natural Science Collections COVID Task Force and Consortium of European taxonomic facilities, which enable better documentation and sharing of information about wildlife hosts and pathogens, and hopefully will help forestall the next global pandemic. Similarly, actions to reverse human-caused global warming is dangerously overdue. Policy advances are slow, and significant progress remains elusive. Yet research to predict and plan for future outcomes continues, including at the museum. One of our curators, Natalie Goodkin, and her team are on their way to go scuba diving in the South China Sea and the Pacific Ocean to find and collect samples from 300 to 500-year-old corals, whose skeletons record environmental conditions over that time. The team painstakingly analyzes samples in the lab to understand how the ocean's chemistry, as reflected in the coral's formation, has been impacted by the climate, all to help us better understand climate patterns today and predict what may be in store. And this is a collaboration among not only the museum, but the Earth Observatory in Singapore, the National Museum of Marine Biology in Taiwan, the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute, and of course, folks right here in New York. Another example which touches on the important issue of species is the important issues of species loss. Curator Jessica Ware is part of a team working to assess the decline of insect populations and species from animals on the Earth, accounting for 1.2 million of the total Earth species. So insects actually, there are 1.2 million species of insects. In comparison, there are about 60,000 vertebrate species. So we are way outnumbered by bugs in the larger scheme of things. So Dr. Ware and her team this summer is focused on termite colonies in Guyana. They're interested in a fungal disease that's threatening the colonies. This is important because insect species are going extinct at a precipitous rate, and along with their decline, we lose ecosystems, food systems, and it impacts human health. This global network of entomologists, conservation biologists, community scientists, data scientists, and other stakeholders are exploring the magnitude and patterns of decline, identifying the primary causes and consequences for ecosystem functioning and human welfare, and developing policy recommendations to mitigate and reverse the losses. As Dr. Ware says, in the absence of bugs, we will all die. In fact, we probably won't last more than 3 months. So next time you're out about the insects, that's a powerful thing to reflect on. The ultimate goal, of course, is solving and navigating global crises. To do that, we have to communicate with the general public, educate students, nurture tomorrow's scientists, influence policy, galvanize public attention and concern. Collective change. So unlike many of their colleagues around the world and at other institutions, Drs. Ware, Goodkin, and Simmons work in the context of really an institution that serves the public and serves the city here in New York, the American Museum of Natural History, where the research can and does reach the public directly through our exhibitions and programs. You know, really for 150 years, it's been core to integrate the research enterprise with public engagement in all that we do, and that's really what makes work at the museum distinctive. So, for example, if you come and visit, you'll see the climate section of the Gottesman Hall of Planet Earth, which features a high-definition media wall streaming the latest news and discoveries in climate change research. So, and in fact, if you go this week, you'll see a lot of information about climate-induced forest fires around the world, including those in Canada. The museum presented numerous programs, mainly online during lockdowns related to COVID at the height of the pandemic. And as some of you know, we also hosted a COVID vaccination site, which administered more than 100,000 vaccines. Our new Solomon Family Insectarium presents the stories, importance, and plight of insect species, including pollinators like bees. And also related to the current wildfires, one of our astrophysicists, Michael Shara, is actually appearing this evening on Channel 5 Local News, so you can probably Google it and find it on YouTube later on, to talk about the science and optics behind why smoke made the sky appear orange this week in New York. And this is just one example of how the media turns to the museum to try to explain the impact of science on our lives and what we see around us. Louis Pasteur once said, "Science knows no country because knowledge belongs to humanity, and that is the torch that illuminates the world." You know, simply put, or putting that in a different way, science belongs to all of us. Everyone should have the opportunity to develop literacy and fluency in scientific thinking and scientific ideas, most especially in this time of dire existential threats. You know, both science and education are essential to address even a different crisis that we face, and that's the crisis of inequity and injustice. If we don't make science accessible, we risk losing a lot of talent that could help us solve many of the problems that we're facing now and down the road, and we'll continue to struggle to make inroads in policymaking and decision-making more broadly. And on an individual level, having a familiarity with science is increasingly essential for us to live effectively as citizens, voters, family members, and neighbors. And this is where museums like AMNH come in. It's wonderful to see the public, our neighbors, and visitors from across the country and around the world, many of whom have felt isolated during the pandemic, wandering through the museum, learning and being inspired by science, the natural world, and the scientific process. And they are coming with great enthusiasm to our breathtaking new Gilder Center, so I hope everyone comes and sees the new building. It's already become an interesting icon for the city and a vibrant center for science and learning, and unifying focus is interconnectedness and interdependence of all life. So it is a great honor to be with you here this evening and to accept this award from the Foreign Policy Association. Again, I'd like to thank all of you. I'd also like to thank my wife, Renee Romano, who is here this evening. And I look forward to seeing some of you down on the Upper West Side at the museum. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your remarks, Dr. Decatur. And now I'm honored to invite Noel Latif, the president and CEO of the Foreign Policy Association. He is going to introduce CUNY Chancellor, Dr. Felix Matos Rodriguez.
Thank you, Juan. Good evening. It's my honor to present the Foreign Policy Association medal to the Chancellor of the City University of New York, Dr. Felix Matos Rodriguez. I remember fondly at our centennial gala in 2018 that I presented the medal to your counterpart, the Chancellor of the State University of New York. And we subsequently put him on our board. So tonight I'd like to make an overture publicly that we would be very interested in having your participation on our board. You know, the Foreign Policy Association is active on 1,100 campuses around the country, and our materials, primarily the Great Decisions briefing book, are used in introductory courses on international relations, and in some cases, they are actually student-led courses. At the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, there are 300 students who participate semester in, semester out, and organize the course. And I'm very pleased to offer a Great Decisions seminar at one of Dr. Rodriguez's campuses, Baruch, at the Zicklin School of Business, which has an enrollment of 17,000 students And the honors program is really quite outstanding. I have never encountered students of this caliber, and several of them are with us today. So I'm going to ask Seva and Molly to stand up and be recognized. Dr. Rodriguez was appointed Chancellor of CUNY in 2019. The Chancellor knows the CUNY system well, having been president of both Hostos Community College and Queens College. His track record in improving education access, as we say in the law, speaks for itself. Since assuming the post of Chancellor, he continues to focus his energies on lifting students up the socioeconomic ladder, a very important initiative, particularly in light of what we just heard from Dr. Decatur. And in addition to his distinguished career in academic administration, the Chancellor is highly regarded as a scholar of the history and culture of Puerto Rico. He has published numerous books and peer-reviewed articles on Puerto Rico. It gives me great pleasure to present Chancellor Rodriguez with the FPA Medal. You won't put it around your neck. Thank you so much. There's the photographers on this side.
Buenas noches. Continuamos el programa en español. We keep our program in Spanish, given the instructions of our board chair, Fernandez. So thank you so much for this honor. Thank you, Noel, for that beautiful introduction. Thank you also for being such a dedicated faculty member with our students in Baruch, and for bringing some of the students to be part of the celebration. And my appreciation to the members of the Foreign Policy Association, Chairman Henry Fernandez and Vice Chairman Sana Saba, and all the members of the board. Obviously, I'd like to congratulate my fellow honorees. Sean, welcome to New York. We look forward to working with you in the years ahead. And un saludo especial a la honorable Nadia Calvino, un honor estar en su compañía. Henry mentioned that he was the descendant, as you mentioned, great-grandparents that came from Madrid. So I am great-grandparents who came from the Canary Islands, and I'm married to a wonderfully descendant of very openly minded Catalan descendants that came to Puerto Rico. And so Spain is very much part of our family history, so it's an honor to be here. I'm deeply honored to receive the medal from the Foreign Policy Association, and I receive it on behalf of CUNY's faculty, staff, and students. I am proud to share this recognition with everyone throughout the university who works every day to expand knowledge and understanding of international affairs through their teaching, their research, and their public engagement. They reach not only their students, but also immigrants or the children of immigrants and individuals who trace their heritage to countries in every corner of the globe. I'm especially touched because of my personal history and trajectory and career at CUNY. I'm a historian at heart, and Noel mentioned that feels like a previous life, where I used to be teaching courses in the history of the Caribbean, Puerto Rico, and Latin America. And so I've been connected to this idea since my time of being a professor at CUNY, that students today need to know about the world beyond the one that they know from their own communities. They need a broad perspective in order to succeed in today's world. CUNY has long been our city's greatest driver of upward social and economic mobility. You would expect the Chancellor of CUNY to say that, but I have a whole list of independent economists that can document that, and about the impact of our work at CUNY moving individuals from the lower percentile of socioeconomic status to the middle class and above. But there's another important way in which CUNY's important mission, a unique mission, improves lives, and I like to call it civic mobility. It is the idea that a key role played by our universities, and particularly by a great public or urban university like CUNY, is to shape the next generation of citizens. Even as we fulfill our primary obligation to provide students with opportunities for academic achievement and career success, it is also our job to turn out graduates who are well-informed and engaged with the world, but also active in our democracy in our country. When you think that CUNY is an international university, we mean it with our numbers. More than a third of all our students were born outside the United States. And when you take students who are second generation, the children of immigrants, that reaches about 60% of our student body, right? And that is not because we go out and recruit international students like many other universities do. We do a bit of that, but it happens organically because of CUNY's history and reputations as the Ellis Island of American higher education. I am proud to share that between students, faculty, and staff, members of our community have 200 countries of origin and speak 137 languages. All right? Thank you. And just to give some flavor to that, just last night, I was at a reception honoring our top academic achievers, all the valedictorians and salutatorians from our 25 campuses. It's one of my favorite events as Chancellor. We're being all together with their families, right? And let me give you a list of the countries that were represented among the valedictorians. Dominican Republic, Jamaica, Guyana, Venezuela, Peru, Colombia, Ecuador, Kosovo, Senegal, Nigeria, Hong Kong, South Korea, the Philippines, Sri Lanka, India, and the United Arab Emirates. I think you get the picture. All right? CUNY attracts people from all over the world because New York does. We have many students who come from places in the world that are the flashpoints of conflicts. One of my fellow presidents, the president of City College, Vincent Boudreau, who's a political scientist, he makes the point that whenever there's a conflict anywhere in the world, whenever something happens, right, we at CUNY invariably find ourselves receiving people from those countries a few years after, if not immediately. And that's one of the great things of CUNY and part of our DNA, that people from all over the world find their way to New York, and in doing that, they find their way to one of our CUNY campuses. For many of our students, foreign affairs isn't just a weighty policy and intellectual discussion. It's personal. They bring a sensibility about what's needed to make the world work better, and that's something that contributes to the culture of understanding that we aspire to achieve. In so many ways, our students are cultural ambassadors for the places they come from, and it's through personal interactions with others that they form a microcosm of a global stage. One of CUNY's most distinguished alums, and you saw him in the video that we saw at the beginning, was Secretary of State Colin Powell, who was also, of course, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and a National Security Advisor. General Powell used to joke that the education he received at City College prepared him better for military and public service than the education some of his peers received at West Point or some of the other military academies. It is fitting that the first black Secretary of State and the first black chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff came from CUNY. And this year, we are celebrating the 10th anniversary of the Colin Powell School of Civic and Global Leadership at City College of New York. A big part of its mission is to diversify the ranks of public service leadership, and especially those intending to pursue careers in foreign policy and the U.S. Foreign Service. The Foreign Service needs more diversity to handle coming global challenges, and CUNY students provide a great opportunity for that. This summer, for example, the school has 250 students from throughout CUNY working in paid internships, mainly in public service and foreign affairs. In addition to the Colin Powell School, we have the national recognized Mark School of Public and International Affairs at Baruch, and I'm so happy that today in the reception I get to meet several of you who teach in our campuses, so thank you for the service to our students. But also at our graduate center, which is unique in higher education because we bring all the graduate faculty into one campus connected to our 25 campus system. We have the Ralph Bunche Institute for International Studies, which includes units focused on the UN, global ethics, and universal rights. And other centers at the Graduate Center include the European Union Studies Center, the Institute for Research on the African Diaspora in the Americas and the Caribbean, and the Middle East and Middle Eastern American Center. The Foreign Policy Association Medal recognizes CUNY's work in expanding public knowledge in international affairs. I will note that sometimes awards recognize not only previous accomplishments, but also the potential for the future. And I said that even before I was recruited to be part of the board of the Foreign Policy Association. So if you allow me, I would like to accept this award not only as the recognition of the work we have done so far, but for the work that we continue to do, but also as an inspiration to do more and to do it better. Throughout CUNY, we have excellent and creative faculty who are experts in the areas of international affairs and communities, whether it is Asia, Central America, Eastern Europe, Africa, or anywhere else. There is great interest among them in coming together to make global studies a more integrated effort. First and foremost, we are here to serve our city, but we are positioned to make CUNY a more global university, and our students have much to gain from that effort. That is why I would like for all of us in this room, and this is going to be my pitch to conclude my remarks, to commit more resources and more work to get more U.S. students engaged in study abroad. I don't need to tell this audience that our country lags in an embarrassing way compared to the rest of the world in the percentage of students who take advantage of studying overseas. This is particularly challenging when you think about students from public universities and students like the City University of New York. 40% of our students come from households that make less than $30,000 a year here in New York City, right? Most of our students work full-time and part-time to achieve their education. So for many of them, the idea of taking time to go abroad, it is complicated and it is difficult. I need your help in identifying a lot more resources, better policies, so that we can find ways so that students like that can take advantage of going abroad, experiencing that, and bringing all that knowledge and expertise to our work here in the United States. I know that expanding the opportunities for students to go study abroad would invariably be a game changer in the way the general American public engages foreign affairs, and we need to sort of find a partnership and a way to do that, and I figure this will be the great audience to make that case. So with that common challenge and that call to action and partnership, I salute again the Foreign Policy Association for their indispensable work and thank them for this honor bestowed upon all of us who work to make the world a better place through higher education at the City University of New York. Buenas noches y muchísimas gracias.
Thank you so much. For the record, I was a member of the CUNY faculty for more than a decade, so he was technically my boss for some time. So, technically. So that's going to conclude our night. I want to congratulate the honorees once again. Thank you to the Foreign Policy Association for such a wonderful dinner. And thank you all for coming tonight. Be careful out there. There's still a lot of smoke in the air. Have a great evening.